Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Godstowe this morning. My name is Sophie Green, and I am the headmistress. Thank you very much for coming to our open morning this morning. Just a couple of housekeeping points first. If you would like to ask a question, please do so by going into the chat from the control bar, which should appear on your screen, and then post a question. Hopefully after that, you'll receive an answer quite soon. Some of you, I am sure, have already looked around our school. And if not our physical school, then I very much hope that you have enjoyed our virtual tour, which is on our website. We're an independent prep school with around 450 pupils, educating boys and girls up to the age of 7 and girls up to the age of 13. This morning, I shall be talking more about main school and therefore girls aged 7 to 13. At Godstowe, we believe that children learn and grow in the best way that they can when they are happy and feel at home. We have a very high teacher to pupil ratio, which allows us to support each one in his or her individual journey through the prep school years to leave us fully prepared for life at senior school and well equipped with life skills, which will enable them to enjoy and contribute to the modern world. Pupil well-being is at the heart of all that we do, and we are currently in the middle of a 2-year focus on well-being. This term we have been focusing on resilience, encouraging pupils to cope with failure just as well as success, and to build on their mistakes. We have been so impressed by the resilience and tenacity that our pupils have shown whilst attending our virtual school. So it's good to see that our efforts have paid off. And this, combined with our nurturing and purposeful environment, allows our pupils to achieve very high academic standards. We track all of our pupils in all subjects, and it is clear to see that although we're a non-selective school, I'm very proud of that fact, our pupils achieve at well above the national average level. There are many aspects of Godstowe which contribute to making it so successful, but this morning I would like to particularly highlight 2. Firstly, the excellent standard of the teaching. A large number of our teachers, and particularly for year 5 and upwards, are actually secondary trained teachers, and therefore they're subject specialists. As head, I very much enjoy visiting lessons, particularly when I am showing parents around. And I am always so impressed with every lesson that I visit. Whether it be locating destinations with ordnance survey maps spread out on the floor, designing an information leaflet about possible cures for the Black Death, painting really impressive self-portraits, or learning alternative methods, quite often involving some chocolate bars, to work with fractions, designing mini balloons with baskets for eggs. Every single girl has been engaged in every single lesson, and it has been heartwarming and inspirational to see. We have an exceptionally well-staffed learning support department, offering targeted help for pupils with learning differences, and our academic setting arrangements ensure that all pupils learn at the pace which is best suited to the individual. The second thing I would like to highlight to you is the liveliness and happiness of our pupils. One has only to walk down the corridor at lunchtime to encounter an excited host of girls heading for choir, lacrosse practice, gym club, library, and a whole host of other exciting opportunities available. Each girl is really keen to find the thing or things that she can excel at, and at the same time to support her friends in doing the same. It is hard to believe that this liveliness and happiness is thriving, even now, whilst we have all been working in lockdown. But our celebration assemblies, which we show on Friday morning, simply buzz with all of the children's energy, and the work that they have completed at home is truly breathtaking. At Godstowe, we have around 100 boarders who live in 3 different boarding houses. And our head of boarding will be talking to you shortly with more details about that. But what I will say is that our boarding really is a home from home. For all pupils, day girls and boarders, the opportunities on offer beyond the academic curriculum are abundant and varied. girls can choose from a fantastic range of activities and clubs, from cookery to riding, from politics club to lacrosse squad practice, gymnastics to lambda, and so much more. Every girl can find something to enjoy whilst learning a host of new skills into the bargain. Sport at Godstowe is very important to us, and I hope that you have all been able to watch the sports video on our website. All pupils are taught sport in their year group by subject specialists, and the sports on offer include netball, lacrosse, athletics, swimming in our brand new pool, which has recently opened probably about a year ago, and which you will have seen on your tour, tennis, rounders, hockey, riding, gymnastics, dance and fitness. There are opportunities to take part at all levels, whether it be from simply enjoying the lesson to being a member of a team and representing the school regionally and often even nationally. And finally, before handing over, underpinning all of these fantastic things that we offer lies something very traditional. Our school is 120 years old, and although we are forward-thinking in our approach to education and well-being, we remain traditional in our values. We encourage all of our girls to be polite, considerate, and kind, to work for what they believe in, but at the same time to support each other in doing so. I will hand over now to our Deputy Head Academic, Mr. Whitworth.
Thank you, Sophie. Good morning, everyone, and a further warm welcome from me. Yesterday was the last day of formal teaching for our leaving year group, the Year 8s. They are ready for the immediate challenge of exams for their senior schools, and more importantly, ready for the wider horizons beyond, ready for more independence. For their teachers of the last 6 years, more in some cases, it's a poignant moment. They can remember the same girls as 8-year-olds and anything but ready. Their earlier uncertainties about friendships, a shyness in the classroom perhaps, a look of momentary panic before a concert or stage performance. But seeing the leavers departing is also a moment of affirmation. Witnessing their happiness, their confidence, their success, it reminds us every year of why we love doing what we do at Godstowe. So what do we do academically, and how do we prepare them and help you as parents for the transition to senior school? In the lower school, years 3 to 5, we focus on building academic confidence, a core of knowledge, the skills to acquire it, and a desire to know more. We celebrate collaboration, the willingness to try, to ask questions, and to learn from our mistakes. In the upper school, years 6 to 8, we follow the Common Entrance curriculum, an adaptation of the national curriculum widely used by the independent sector. It offers breadth, depth, and challenge. Separate sciences, all the humanities, it demands much more than simply a base of knowledge. It requires research, explanation, analysis. Essays require organisation and structure. Opinions require supporting evidence. It rewards insight and independence of thought. Teaching can be adapted to suit different levels and different academic needs. It's an excellent foundation for GCSE, and it's also great fun to teach. The CE curriculum is relevant to all senior school admissions processes. Whether your daughter is going to sit a scholarship exam in year 8, set specifically by a senior school, or the Common Entrance exam itself, which can be in either year 6 or year 8, or an online variation of it called the pre-test, which might come in year 6 or 7, or a senior school's very own bespoke assessment, the CE syllabus is relevant and rigorous. For parents deciding how to proceed beyond Godstowe, it can seem like a daunting task. I've already alluded to a maze of different admissions procedures and timelines. We will help you on this journey. We will share our knowledge. We will establish and maintain a dialogue both with you and with the senior schools. We will hold next steps evenings well ahead of the critical deadlines. We host panels of senior school heads and registrars for question and answer sessions. We also host senior school fairs to bring schools right to your daughter's doorstep. Once we know your daughter, and we will get to know her pretty quickly, we'll be able to guide you towards a suitable range of schools, whether single sex, co-ed, day, flexi or full boarding. We will support your decisions with a head's reference, preparation for interview, and access to a practice portal for the online test, the pre-test. What is abundantly clear to me, less than a year after joining Godstowe, is that senior schools are very keen to interview Godstowe girls. They trust what we do here, both academically and pastorally. They seek out our advice about potential candidates, and they listen to our recommendations very carefully. As a parent, that is a very reassuring prospect. So I have briefly described the academic framework of a child's time at Godstowe, but what of our pastoral provision? I will now hand on to our Deputy Head Pastoral, Mrs. ILIFFE KENYON.
Good morning. My name is ILIFFE KENYON and I'm the Pastoral Deputy. We believe that every child matters. We will make every effort to make sure your child has a happy childhood and has the support to thrive. We'll endeavour to make sure your child is safe and happy. It's important that children learn how to get on well with their peers and the adults caring for them, as well as achieving academic potential. School is the place where you make friends, build relationships, and learn about the world around you. There are opportunities to try lots of new skills and the chance to find something you will really enjoy, possibly a life passion. We encourage the children to consider others, to be honest, take responsibility, be kind and courteous, and of course we encourage them to develop good manners. Every member of staff is part of the pastoral team, from the peripatetic music teachers to the headmistress. The pupils are able to build relationships with any member of staff they feel affinity with, and this varies from child to child. In the current uncertainty we are all facing, one thing we are certain of here at Godstowe is that pastoral care is more important than ever. As the lockdown began, we put in place additional layers of pastoral support to help the pupils in these challenging times, and this has proved to be really successful. When your child starts at Godstowe, they'll be allocated a tutor. They meet their tutor at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, and this is often the person who helps them with their everyday concerns. There are 3 heads of school who work with the tutors in their area of the school, gathering information, supporting children where and when it's appropriate. The heads of school oversee both the academic and the pastoral welfare of your children. Mrs. Gillett oversees Lodge, children aged 3 to 7. Mrs. RYCROFT looks after the lower school. Those are children aged in years 3, 4 and 5. Mrs. Reynolds looks after the upper school, children in years 6, 7 and 8. All the staff are clear about the channels for discussing and reporting issues. If they are able to deal with minor matters, they do so. Otherwise, they'll pass the information along the chain. Staff meet regularly, often daily, to deal with each incident as it arises. We believe that the quicker we deal with an issue or take time to listen, the quicker things will be resolved. We believe that it's important that children know that we, that is the parents, teachers and children, are working together as a team, and that our goal is to make sure that they, either your daughter or your son, are happy and able to learn. We're a boarding school, so that gives us an additional layer of care and support added by the boarding staff. All the girls in boarding, whether full-time boarders or flexi boarders, are supported by their house staff. In school, we have an ELSA. This is somebody who's trained in emotional literacy, who can work with your daughters over a number of weeks if they're feeling that certain things are difficult or they need help or strategies. The staff take responsibility for the development and happiness of your children and will contact you if they think there are concerns. In this busy, confusing world, we are keen to keep your children safe, give them the space to grow and help them develop into adults who are able to deal with an ever-changing world. I'm now going to pass you over to Mrs. Gillett. She is head of Lodge and looks after the wellbeing and academic progress of the children in the early years, reception, years 1 and 2.
Good morning. My name is Claire Gillett and I'm head of Lodge at Godstowe. Lodge is made up of nursery, reception, which we call beginners, year 1, which we call kindergarten, and year 2, which is known as transition. The children can start in the nursery the term following their 3rd birthday. In the nursery, we're fortunate to have a purpose-built, spacious inside learning area, as well as 3 exciting outdoor learning areas. This means that whether inside or out, your child will have the opportunity for exciting learning opportunities covering all 7 learning areas in the early years curriculum. High staff to child ratios in nursery allow us to deliver the curriculum in small personalised groups. Children are asked to start nursery with between 5 and 10 half-day sessions, building up to a full 10 sessions as and when they're ready. From beginners upwards, we have 2 classes per year group at Lodge. These are mixed ability classes and have 18 children maximum. In beginners, we have a designated teaching assistant for each class, and in kindergarten and transition, we have 1 teaching assistant per year group who shared across the 2 classes. We also have GAP students who support in Lodge, and the head of learning support is available to work with small groups where necessary. Every morning we have a focus on phonics, literacy and maths, with lessons taken by the class teacher. We hear the child read daily using Oxford Reading Tree, and from year 1 we use Singapore maths in our maths lessons. From beginners upwards, we have specialist teachers for music, PE and French, and we have a set of Chromebooks at Lodge which we use for our IT lessons. You may have already seen our virtual tour of Lodge, which shows you the facilities that Lodge enjoys. As well as our nursery building, we have a separate building for beginners with its own outdoor area. In our main Lodge building, we particularly appreciate having our own library and art room, as well as Lodge Hall, which is used for our assemblies, music lessons and for lunch. We're also very lucky that we can share some of the main school facilities, such as the spacious sports hall, the swimming pool, the JK Theatre for our nativity performances, and the recital hall for various concerts and events. The school day at Lodge runs from 8:45 until 3:30. At nursery, children who are just doing the morning session leave at 11:45. Children can be dropped off in the morning from 8:15 and collected until 4 o'clock from their classrooms, and then aftercare runs from 4 till 5:25. And there are a range of clubs on offer for Lodge pupils, such as ballet, judo, gymnastics. And Breakfast Club is also available from 7:40. Lodge is a very nurturing and friendly community. We recognise that each child is unique, developing in different ways, and staff work very closely with parents, communicating through emails, message books, weekly newsletters and chats at the start and the end of the day. Our aim is to care for the children holistically, ensuring that they are safe, happy and curious to learn. I'm now going to pass on to Mrs. Becky Rycroft, Head of Lower School.
Hello, I am Becky Rycroft and I lead the lower school, which is years 3, 4 and 5 in the prep school. And I will just give you a short flavour of how we encourage the girls to develop as they move through the lower school. When children start in year 3, the majority of their lessons are taught by their own class teacher. So their form room and their teacher is a very constant base. They will be taught by specialists for subjects such as PE, art, DT and music, but otherwise they have the security of their own teacher. In year 4, the girls become a little more independent. Their teacher will teach them for English and probably humanities, all in their own classrooms. But for other subjects, they will start to move around the school to the specialist classrooms of the specialist teachers. So they will make use of the science labs in addition to the facilities that we have for art, DT, music and of course sport. By year 5, the tutor is very much a pastoral guide and an anchor for the girls as they move around the school to make full use of our facilities and staff. As a lower school, there are some opportunities for all 3 year groups to meet together and encourage one another. At lunchtimes and playtimes, there is the opportunity to build and reinforce friendships across the year groups, as well as get to know the girls in other year groups too. In our canteen-style dining room, the staff sit amongst the girls, and this encourages informal conversations and, of course, the reinforcement of good manners. We meet together every fortnight for a lower school assembly where we celebrate various achievements, especially the individual efforts girls have made within our house system. In year 5, the girls can apply to become lower school monitors and take on some responsibilities within the lower school. They go on their first residential trip and they are beginning to develop into independent young girls who are ready for the lower school. I will now hand you on to Michele WESTERN-KAYE, our Head of Boarding at Godstowe.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michele WESTERN-KAYE and I'm Head of Boarding. Boarding at Godstowe is thriving. Our boarding houses are happy and busy and have always been a key part of Godstowe. They are the heartbeat which keeps Godstowe ticking over 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At Godstowe, we have 3 boarding houses, 2 senior houses for upper school and a junior house for lower school girls. Boarders range in age from 7 to 13. Each boarding house has a dedicated and enthusiastic pastoral team, which includes a house mistress, house parent, a deputy house mistress, and house assistants. There is also 24-hour medical care provided. Girls are either full or weekly boarders, part-time, or if space allows, ad hoc. Weekly and full boarders offer the same opportunities, so we find that many weekly boarders will choose to stay in for some weekends, or even just part of a weekend. Sometimes it's because they're involved in a sports match, wish to complete prep in a supervised session, or to accompany a boarder's trip, or quite simply to just have fun. Girls are stimulated and inspired throughout the whole week, creating a culture of independence, mutual support and close community. We offer a safe, caring and disciplined environment where girls can enjoy companionship, fun and a diverse programme of boarding activities during the week and at the weekends. I'd like to pass on now to our head of school and our deputy head of school. Thank you.
Hello, my name is RYCROFT and I've been full boarding at Godstowe for about 5 years now. I started full boarding when I was about 8 years old, and understandably I was quite shy, nervous and I had my worries. But Godstowe gave me so many opportunities to come out of my comfort zone. The boarding facilities are fantastic and we go on yearly trips. My favourite ones would probably be going shopping in the Eden Centre, walking to the Bounty and going to Brighton. But sometimes we do stay on school grounds, which is just as fun. I love going to the JK for the big film, camping on the lacrosse field, and having the Chinese New Year celebrations. Godstowe girls thrive in all aspects of school life. Academics, sporting, music, drama, you name it. And I know that no matter where we are, at home or in school, we are all happy, confident and successful. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ava Phelps. For the past 5 years of my life, Godstowe has offered me more than just a great education. It has offered me a home, community and friendship that I will never forget. I love and will miss Godstowe for many reasons, one of my favourites being the people there to support and help me if I need it. I have also loved all the opportunities the school has offered me, such as trips to Iceland, Italy, North York Moors, and the annual post-CE trip to France that we were very excited to go on, but sadly got cancelled due to coronavirus. I hope you enjoy your virtual tours at Godstowe. Stay safe, have fun, and thank you very much for listening.
Well, I hope that you found that helpful and you enjoyed hearing from our senior members of staff. I think there was lots of information there for you to take away and to consider. We do have some questions which have been asked, which we haven't yet answered while our senior team have been speaking to you. So I'm going to have a look at some of those now and see if we can help with some answers. So just bear with us. I'm sort of assuming that all of our visitors this morning can see the questions which have been published. So I'm going to go into those now. So somebody has asked the question, if my daughter joins in year 3, will there be many girls joining in year 3? So in year 2, we have 2 classes. So we have 2 parallel classes up to the end of year 2, and then in year 3, we open a 3rd class. So in fact, we have quite a lot of new joiners from local primary schools or infant schools or other independent schools. And those new girls are mixed in with our existing Godstowe girls moving up from year 2 to make 3 new classes. So the new girls do settle in really well. So I hope that answers that question. And somebody else has asked the question, what proportion of girls don't board? If a girl is a non-boarder, is there a catchment area? Okay, so that's a good question. So in our main school, we've got about 350 girls, and about 100 of them board. But actually, if you came in during the day and had a look around, you wouldn't be able to say, oh, she's a boarder, she's not a boarder. The girls all mix in completely during the day. And the question, if somebody's a non-boarder, is there a catchment area? It's quite a wide catchment area. And we have some girls that walk to school from 5 minutes away, and we have some girls that come in on minibuses for sort of 30-minute journeys, and we have a few families that drive in from as far away as 45, 50 minutes. So it's really quite a wide range. So I hope that answers that question. Just seeing if there are any others that we haven't answered yet. Okay, I'm going to publish this question. And it says, once I've published them, they go somewhere else. So it says, what percentage of pupils stay on from year 7 upwards? So from year 7, in year 6, we normally have by the end of year 6 about 70 girls, because by then we've gone to 4 classes. We have 3 classes in year 3, and then 3 classes in year 4, and then 4 classes in year 5, and then we keep 4 classes all the way up. So by year 6, we've got about 70 girls in that year group. Of those 70, probably at the end of year 6, somewhere between 15 and 20 normally leave, either because they're going on to grammar school, that's the most common reason, or 1 or 2 might leave because they're going on to an all-girls independent school, which starts at the start of year 7. So let us say then we have about 50 out of 70 that stay on, and then we will have some new joiners always into year 7, and they may be conversely girls that have taken the Bucks 11 Plus and haven't passed it, and just want another couple of years before they move on to their senior school, or perhaps from other independent schools in the area that finish at age 11. And again, for the same reason, they're really keen for their daughters to join us in our nurturing environment for those 2 years. Oh, there's quite a lot of questions now. Okay, let me have a look. Oh, thank you. Somebody said very eloquent students. We really are very proud of our older girls, and what you saw there is really how they do speak. So thank you very much for that. Okay, I've published a question that says, is there space for new students on the school bus from Marlow to the school? Is there a bus that brings them back? Yes, there is a bus that brings them back. The minibuses are quite popular. We do from time to time have to have a waiting list, but of course it does move on quite quickly as girls leave. So we do our very best to accommodate everyone on our minibuses. And if demand ever looks particularly great, then we would look at, if not one of our own minibuses, sourcing from an external company, if we thought that was going to help a lot of parents. Okay, our scholarships available during any year, publish. Okay, I am going to see if I can ask Mr. Whitworth to answer the question. So I think you might be a bit bored of seeing me all the time. Are scholarships available for girls to join at any year? And perhaps we could put bursaries into that as well, Mr. Whitworth.
Yes, a good question. So there are scholarships, 11+ scholarships at Godstowe, which are open to girls internally as well as from outside, and they are both academic, art, music, and an all-rounder. And it's quite a rigorous process. It takes place in the spring term of year 6, and is quite strenuously competed for. For girls moving on to senior schools and thinking of scholarships, that conversation is really part of the dialogue that we would have with parents as they formulate their views about which senior school they're going to choose. But we will, as a staff, will also look across the board and ask staff across the board for their opinions about a pupil's potential as a scholar. And again, that can be in sport, an all-rounder, as well as academic and music. So I hope that answers your question.
So all of the girls that take the 11+ will be really well prepared, because our curriculum that we teach prepares them for it. The 11+ changed about 5 years ago, so that all the schools would know that if we studied the national curriculum, which we do, although we do go beyond it, the girls would be really well prepared. We don't have any specific 11+ tuition, because actually we're a partner school, which means that the girls can take the 11+ here, and that means that we're not allowed to coach. So I hope that's helpful with that one. Now, I did see one here for our head of boarding, and it says, would full boarders feel left out or lonely on the weekends?
Absolutely not. So we have a full programme at weekends. The morning starts on a Saturday morning after breakfast with a supervised prep session. All 3 houses will be doing that in school with qualified teachers, staff, boarding staff. Some will go off to do music practice, some EAL, and some will be involved in sports fixtures. On a Saturday afternoon, we allow the children obviously to have a little bit of downtime. Sometimes we'll go into High Wycombe Centre. Sometimes we'll just do homegrown activities. That could be with individual houses or bringing all the houses together. And then quite often on a Saturday evening, the girls bring their duvets, pillows to either the recital hall or the JK Theatre, as you heard from our head of school, and we have a big film. And then they go back to their boarding houses. And on a Sunday, the girls who wish to will go to church in the morning, if time allows. And that's the day we'll go on some exciting trips, say, for instance, to Brighton or to Chesington, or we'll just go on a really long dog walk. So we've got dogs on site in our boarding houses. With about 70 girls staying in most weekends, I don't think anyone feels lonely or isolated. And the setup at Godstowe is that if you're a weekly boarder, as I said, you can come in for part of the weekend. So quite often a girl will come in Saturday afternoon and stay for the rest of the weekend, or come in on Sunday morning. So we're very flexible with weekend arrangements, and parents might pop in too, just to have a coffee, to take their daughter to lunch. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so I'm going to see if I can skim through some of these questions quite quickly, and then pass on to some of the other staff. My daughter would like to know if you run any residential trips. I think we'll hand over to Mrs. Rycroft for that in a minute, but I'll answer a few more first. Could you give us an indication of the amount of homework set in lower and upper schools? So in lower school, it will be sort of reading and spellings and between 1 and 2 subjects. So it could be up to about 45 minutes in a night. And in upper school, it does start to increase, and it could be up to an hour, or even in year 7 and 8 for common entrance, particularly if you're an academic scholar, it could even get to sort of an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes. But we are very understanding about homework, and we try to make sure that the girls have plenty of academic focus, but not too much. Going to keep going. Do you have any support for overseas boarders? I'll let our head of boarding answer that in a minute. I'd like my daughter to transition to a competitive secondary school in the United States. What is the possibility of leaving? Should we hand over to Mr. Whitworth to answer that, and then after that to Mrs. Rycroft to answer the question about trips?
Do you know, I'm not sure how to answer that question. I'm going to offer to email you back with a reply if that's more helpful.
Hi, yes, so I'm going to answer the question about residential trips. The girls go on their first residential trip in year 5. In year 6 currently there is a residential trip as well. Both of those are sort of outdoor adventure style residential trips. In year 7 the girls go on a combined geography and science residential trip to the North Yorkshire Moors and have great fun there, doing lots of work but getting outside all of the time and really experiencing the joys of Yorkshire weather. In year 8 the girls, after their common entrance exams, have a residential trip to France. In addition to those, there are other residential opportunities. For example, a music tour to Italy, which one of our deputy head girls talked about. Off the top of my head, lacrosse tours, netball tours, ski trips, lots of opportunities for going away as part of the school.
I think what we're going to do now is hand over to Mr. Whitworth, who is going to tell you more about the upper school, because our head of upper school, Mrs. Reynolds, wasn't able to join our webinar at that particular time, but there is a chance that she might have joined now. So I think you're either going to hear Mr. Whitworth talking about the upper school on behalf of Mrs. Reynolds. Yes, that is what you're going to see. Okay, Mr. Whitworth talking about years 6, 7 and 8. Thanks for bearing with us, everybody.
Can you hear me?
Okay, so I'm just going to run you through the comments that Mrs. Reynolds intended to say. She's had difficulties joining the webinar for a couple of reasons. Unlike some other schools, the girls at Godstowe receive teaching from specialist teachers, and when they move from year 5 to 6, they're split into different teaching groups. They're taught in these sets for a group of subjects to enable them to reach their full potential. There are 4 teaching groups in total and 4 tutor groups, so the girls have access to a wide number of pupils in the year in one way or another. Godstowe prides itself on excellent pastoral care provided by a strong team of tutors responsible for each class in each year group. Tutors know the girls well and communication between staff is strong, as Mrs. Kenyon has already alluded to. There are numerous opportunities to engage in other activities, and there's an extensive extracurricular programme offering a wide range of options suited to the interests of almost every child. This year has seen the introduction of the Godstowe Dove Diploma, a progressive 3-tier award that recognises soft skills. The girls in the middle thirds, the year 6 year group, have been enthusiastically working towards completion of the bronze level award. Residential trips are offered to all pupils in the upper school, some overseas and some nearer to home. For example, all girls in year 7 go to Cranedale in North Yorkshire for a combined science and geography field trip. Being at the top of the school enables girls to mature and develop with their friends in a familiar environment, and being a big fish in a little pond is something the senior pupils love. Positions of responsibility are plentiful in the upper school. All girls in year 7 become prefects, and in year 8 there are school monitors, and you heard from 2 of them, and leadership opportunities in many different areas of school life. The difference in a pupil between years 6 and 8 is significant, and it's lovely to see them leave Godstowe as confident, happy and successful young ladies ready to tackle absolutely anything. I'll now hand back to Miss Green to take any further questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitworth. Okay, I'm just going to see if I can work my way through some of these questions, and then I'm going to hand over after that to our pastoral deputy, because there's a question about girls who might be lacking in confidence a little bit. So is there a boarding place available for year 5 in September 2020? Our boarding numbers are looking really healthy, but because we move to a 4th class, so we have 3 classes in year 3, 3 classes in year 4, and then we open a 4th class in year 5. And that actually is because at that age we start to get a little bit more interest in boarding. So I think at this point in time we do have some boarding places left for year 5 in September. So I hope that helps with that. The next question, how many girls in each dorm? That really varies. I think our smallest dorm is 2, and our larger dorms actually do have up to 8 girls at the moment. It sounds a lot, but they are very big rooms. They're actually, our boarding houses are old houses with very large rooms upstairs. But of course, what we're working on at the moment is the social distancing in the boarding, in our boarding houses, and we're waiting to hear the final guidance on that from the Boarding Schools Association. But please be assured that whatever that guidance is, we will follow it. So it might not be quite 8 girls in a dorm when our borders start back in September. I hope that's helpful. Someone's asking me what animals there are in the school. There are some dogs in the boarding houses. I have my own dog, Meg, which is lovely for the girls. But if there are girls who are nervous of dogs, then they aren't exposed to dogs unless they particularly want to be. Okay, Mrs. Kenyon. Somebody's asking us, how do you deal with students that are particularly low in confidence?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a very interesting question and probably a very difficult one to answer. But we have years and years of experience of dealing with children who are confident and unconfident. And what we find is that as they go through the school, they're in such a safe environment. They have so much trust in the staff and their friends who support them. The teachers support them, their friendship groups support them, that you see them grow into much more confident individuals. I think particularly years 7 and 8, which we call upper thirds and fourths, are particularly good years for children to spend in at Godstowe, because they are in a very safe environment. They're not subjected to lots of things that go on in senior schools at that age, and they're able to grow at their own pace. They're able to develop their own personality, and what we find is that when they leave us at the end of year 8, they have turned into very confident and very self-assured individuals. I'm just thinking of a few girls that we've got in the force at the moment who have been very, very anxious when they first started at Godstowe and now are confident. This week alone, I asked them, could they possibly do an assembly? Within 2 minutes, they sent back clips of themselves doing all sorts of funny things, which they shared with the whole school. They're absolutely confident. And so all I know is that we somehow managed to help them. And I think it's because it's a very safe environment and they grow into their own skins and become adults who can deal with the world around them.
So let's have a look at some more of the questions. And then I'm going to hand over to our head of boarding to answer the question about overseas support. But while it's on me, I'll try and do a few. Okay. Let me see where we got to. How do you deal with students who are particularly low in confidence? Okay, we've done that. In the weekend, the girls in school, what sport do they have? I'll leave that for Mrs. Weston when we go to talk about supporting overseas pupils. Our daughter would be joining age 10, having learnt Mandarin but no French. Would that be an issue? The children here do learn French from nursery, but it's not written French, it's a lot of spoken French. And so I think joining age 10 into year 5, it is in fact in year 5 when the French becomes a little bit more formal with more written. So I don't think it would be too much of a problem. Our French is taught by subject specialists, and then actually when the girls go into year 6, the French is taught sort of at different standard levels. So we'd be able to put your daughter in the class that was right for her. Will the girls be able to play with Meg after school? Yes, absolutely, definitely, lovely. How flexible is the flexi boarding? So we have lots of different options for our boarding. So we haven't I think Mrs. Weston explained that we have about 100 boarders, and probably of those 170 are full boarders, and then some are weekly, and then some board just for 1 or 2 nights a week. So it is really flexible. Do you provide a music tutor for the students who need it? So we have lots of different visiting music teachers in lots of different instruments who really look after the girls. We do have a high standard of music. Some of our pupils achieve grade 8, and actually last year we had 1 or 2 working on diploma, which is an incredibly high standard. But equally, we have lots of girls and boys in year 2. Some of them will learn instruments as well, working on prep tests and grade 1 and grade 2, and we enjoy hearing them in assembly. So we have a really wide standard and range of music lessons. Do students mix with any boys' schools for social development? Well, we've got quite a lot of brother schools, I suppose we might say, in the area. We've got the Beacon School, and we have Daveney's School, and we have Caldicott School, which are all boys' prep schools. And actually, as the girls get older in years 6, 7 and 8, we do try and arrange social events with those schools, such as debating. We have a very healthy debating competition, a dinner, a barbecue, and actually we have a lot of siblings in common. Quite a lot of the girls here have brothers at all those schools, in fact. Hello, it's great that Godstowe has such a strong music department. Do you have a school orchestra or smaller chamber ensembles? How often do they meet? We have a full school orchestra, and yes, we have a wind band and forte fiddlers and a percussion group, and they all meet and play at least once a week. And then at the end of most half terms, in fact, not quite all, but most half terms and terms, we have concerts. And then very often on Fridays at the end of the day, we have slightly more low-key student recitals where the parents can come and watch, and I try and get down to those as much as possible, because it's lovely to sit for an hour at the end of a busy week and listen to the girls playing. Okay, I am going to hand over now to Mrs. Weston, who's going to answer those few questions about boarding, and then I think after that, I think we have got Mrs. Reynolds now, our elusive head of upper school, and I think that she's going to introduce herself and say a few words. So Mrs. Weston, head of boarding, and Mrs. Reynolds, head of upper school.
Yes, hello. To answer the question about support for overseas boarders, all the girls at Godstowe are supported by all the staff, and the staff work very closely together to make sure that happens. With overseas boarders, if English isn't their first language, they will probably do some EAL, which is English as an additional language, and they will be supported by that department. We also have GAP students and house assistants who come mostly from Australia, and are quite often Chinese speakers, or they speak an additional language, so they will help support the girls. And as they're 18 to 19 years old, the girls do have, quite a close bond with them, so they can offer support. But I think probably the most important thing that we pride ourselves on in boarding at Godstowe is that we work very closely with parents and with guardians, and with guardians particularly if the parents are non-English speaking. So we will speak to the guardian and have this three-way conversation, really. So it's between boarding staff, school staff and guardians or parents. So I feel that we cover all bases. We also have, for the boarders, 2 or sometimes 3 independent listeners who are not associated with Godstowe, but who come in and have supper. They'll come to events that the girls are doing, get to know them, and girls can speak to them in complete confidence. Obviously, if there's something we need to know, we would, but it just gives the girls an additional route, somebody to chat to. And I think the girls feel supported in that at weekends we will recognise different cultures, different festivals, and girls will present maybe a little show or a talk from their culture. We'll enjoy some of their food, we'll dress up, we'll invite key staff to come along. School staff are very keen to get involved with the girls when they're having these celebrations, and sometimes it's just a celebration after school. Say for the Spanish Cinco de Mayo, we'll do the 5th of May celebration just a little way after school. So I do feel that we give the boarders from all cultures the best support we possibly can. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So I just wanted to talk to you about, I believe there was a question about sport at the weekends, and in answer to that, there's a lot of sport that goes on at the weekends. There are matches, fixtures for netball, lacrosse, obviously summer sports, tennis, athletics, and cross country, and also the boarders get many sporting opportunities at the weekend, fun sports, opportunities created just for them, or they might join in local events that are taking place. So there are a multitude of sporting opportunities going on at weekends for the girls. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Fiona. I'm glad that you've had the opportunity to meet Mrs. Reynolds. I'm going to go through a few more questions, but while I'm doing that, just so we can be a bit ready ourselves, when I've finished answering a few more, there's going to be one for Mrs. Reynolds about famous alumni, and there's going to be one for Mrs. Gillett about who teaches our reception children and how we teach them, and whether there are any places left in reception for September. But before we do that, so we're not dotting around too much, I'm going to look into the published questions. So who teaches reception? That's for Mrs. Gillett. Very excited to join in September. Well, we're really looking forward to seeing you properly in September as well. Can't wait to meet the girls and dogs. Do you have any famous alumni? I'm going to pass it over to Fiona shortly. How does Godstowe prepare students for the 11+ entry examinations? So there are two sorts of 11+ entry exams. There's the Buckinghamshire 11+, which I've really already answered that question. And then there's the Common Entrance 11+, which some of our girls do take in the January of Year 6. And normally they would take that if they were going to be looking for a deferred place to Wickham Abbey or a deferred place to Queen Anne's. One or two will take it because they're considering leaving at the end of Year 6. And Common Entrance at 11+ is sat in English, Maths and Science. And in the autumn term, in the November, all of the girls who we know will be taking that exam have the opportunity to sit mocks, and they have those papers marked and individual feedback. So in fact, although it's not a high number of girls that take CE at 11+ in the January, they are really well prepared for it. Does the school have a minibus? So we have 3 minibus routes. They are, as I've said already, quite popular. One from Amersham Way, one from Beaconsfield, and one from Marlow. But any questions about minibuses and transport are best addressed to our registrar, who are both working at the moment full-time. So please feel free to get in touch with them next week. Somebody's asking, would you have places for Year 6 and beginners entry? So Year 6, we have 4 classes following on from the 4 classes in Year 5. So we don't actually open another class. So it's not a typical joining point, but we do from time to time have girls join in Year 6. So I think there may be 1 or 2 places in Year 6, but again, I think that's a really good one for our registrar next week, but I think probably there are 1 or 2 places left, but normally by the end of year 6 that year group is certainly completely full. I've applied for my daughter for entry in 2022 into year 5. What is the next step? I was hoping to visit this February. That's very difficult, but the pandemic translated to cancellation of my visit with my daughter. Well, I'm sorry that we've all had this difficulty. I really hope it won't put you off looking for a place for your daughter at Godstowe. I would say the next step really is to have a look at our virtual tour, look at everything on our website. You're in good time. It's still 2 years ahead, and then contact our registrar. And what we're actually doing at the moment is we are interviewing prospective pupils by Skype and looking at reports and getting to know the girls as well as we can virtually. So I'd very much recommend that you pursue that route, and maybe the next step then would be a Skype interview. This is a really good question. Do you have any plans for overseas students who have 2 weeks quarantine when they come back to school in September? So I actually received an email from the Home Office last night about the quarantine plans. So it's still very much all new restrictions coming to us. But I had a good chat with Mrs. Weston about this yesterday. And what would normally happen, we work very closely with our overseas pupils' guardians. So I think at the moment we would want to be working with those guardians so that girls could quarantine with them. That may change. It's quite a difficult question to answer in a lot of detail at the moment because it's so hot off the press. But we have become very, very good at finding creative solutions to all of the difficult problems that we've been faced with recently. So, you know, we do have a thriving boarding community, and we will continue with our thriving boarding community. So if we need to, if our overseas pupils need to find quarantine for 2 weeks, then we will make sure that is available. Somebody's asking, in the weekend, the girls stay in school, are they learning? Well, that's a good question. They do some learning. So Saturday mornings, they'll finish their homework. Some of the overseas pupils will have their English as another language lessons. They'll do their music practice. But it is so important that our girls do have the opportunity to have downtime at the weekend. So whilst there will be plenty of opportunity to finish work and work on projects, there's also got to be the opportunity to relax and play and be themselves and go on trips and play sport. So I think the girls have a very, very good balance at the weekends of academic and not academic and time to relax. Can the girls bring toys in the night? Yes, they can bring toys in the night. Okay, I'm just going to answer this last one before we hand over to Mrs. Gillett and then Mrs. Reynolds. So do the senior schools such as Wycombe Abbey have lots of pupils joining at year 9 instead of year 7? That is a very interesting question. So quite a lot of our girls will always go on to Wycombe Abbey at 13, and Wycombe Abbey opens a new class which is normally for about 25 girls into their year 9. I would say ordinarily our girls from Godstowe take about 6 of those places, which actually, if you think, then we are taking more than 20% of those places in year 9. And I know that normally there are about 150 applicants for those 25 places. I think we do really well with that. Wycombe Abbey are understanding of the fact that we're a prep school that goes up to 13. And actually, we do have an arrangement with Wycombe Abbey so that some of our girls can test at age 11. And then if they're successful in being offered a place, they can actually defer that place to year 9, and they'll be lucky enough to really enjoy their final 2 years here. OK, you've probably heard enough from me for a little while. So let's see if we can go over to Mrs. Gillett to tell us a little bit more about the teaching in reception.
Hello again. Yes, so in beginners, as I say, we have 2 beginners classes. There's up to 18 in each class, and at the moment there are spaces for September. We have some children coming up from nursery, but we also have some new children joining at this age. and we follow the early years curriculum, focusing on personal, social and emotional development, physical development and communication and language. As well as this, we also look at literacy, maths, understanding the world and the expressive arts. Most of the time the classes are taken by their class teacher, so that's Mrs. Adams and Miss Winard. Each class has their own teaching assistant with them as well, but they do also have 4 PE lessons a week taken by specialist PE teachers. They have 1 French lesson a week by our specialist French teacher, and they have a music lesson a week as well with our specialist music teacher. And for things like music, they come across to the Lodge Hall to have their lesson there. And for PE, they're able to use the sports hall and the facilities that we have at Godstowe. Thank you.
Good morning again. Well, famous alumni, we have several actually. Eleanor Garnier, who some of you may know as a BBC political correspondent. She's currently on maternity leave, but you frequently will have seen her outside number 10. Sophie Dahl, the daughter of Roald Dahl, and Georgia Tennant, who married to David Tennant, was Georgia Moffat, who's an actress. These 3 come to mind, and some of you may know that Enid Blyton also wrote one of her famous 5 novels, famous 5 books, a series, based on Highlands boarding house. Mallory Towers was written based on Highlands. So there's a few for you. Thank you.
And we've also had a question asking about the number of Chinese pupils in the school, and I know that quite a lot of families are interested in that. So we are an English prep school, and we're very proud of our tradition, but we do have, we are a multicultural school as well, and the pupils that join us from overseas, I think, very much enjoy learning about our culture. But perhaps most important of all is to consider the steps that we take pastorally to make sure that all of our girls integrate together. I mean, all of the girls have their cultural identity, which we respect and celebrate, but similarly, all of the girls have the Godstowe culture in common. And I think perhaps we could ask Mrs. Kenyon to tell us a little bit about how we make sure that all the girls mix together and learn from each other's cultures and enjoy them. Let's hand over to Mrs. Kenyon.
Good morning. Well, we treat everybody exactly the same. We make sure that there is no differences. In lessons, we treat all children identically. I suppose that helps with the fact that we have a school uniform. We make sure that if there are any issues at all, any underlying things that go on, they're nipped in the bud and sorted out straight away. We have a very clear programme of PSHE, which Mrs. Reynolds, in fact, is in charge of. And in that, the programme makes sure that children learn about acceptance of all the different ways people are, their sexuality, their different, all the different countries they come from, because we live in a multicultural society, and it's really important to us that we treat everybody equally and fairly. We can't say that there's never ever any issues, but what we hope to do is nip them in the bud and explain to the children the impact of their words. And I think we're proud of the fact that they all get on well together. They live together in the boarding houses completely happily. And I think as a community as a whole, we do a really good job of integrating the girls. Another issue that parents sometimes bring up is language, because you can find that obviously if you've got several girls talking Chinese together, that excludes other girls. So we make a big effort to make sure in the boarding houses and in school that everybody is speaking English whilst they're in the Godstowe community. And also that's the reason for them being in England, to learn English. So I think we do a very good job at integrating the pupils together and making them feel part of the Godstowe community. Back to Ms. Green.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Kenyon. So somebody is asking us a question. I would love to know what percentage of the girls go on to other day schools, not Wycombe Abbey in year 9, because of course Wycombe Abbey has boarding, but because it's local to a number of our pupils, it has an added attraction of being one of the day schools in the area. So I think I'm going to hand over to Mr. Whitworth to talk a little bit more about the process we use to direct our pupils as they leave to the right senior schools, and to talk about the choice of day schools for our year 9. So Mr. Whitworth, thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. It's, as I mentioned in my presentation, the importance of dialogue with parents from an early stage about those choices. So and that dialogue really is formalised, if you like, from about year 5 onwards, so from within the lower school, but sometimes earlier. And we'll start with the child, and we'll start with how the child is suited or might be suited to a single-sex environment, staying in a day environment, or whether the family might contemplate some boarding experience at Godstowe, which might perhaps broaden choices later on. So that's an important part of the process. The proportion of girls leaving in year 9 going to day schools is probably a lot lower than parents would expect, perhaps from 2 years out. 2 years out, I think many of them would still be quite, maybe a little hesitant about contemplating boarding or flexi boarding after Godstowe. But there's a surprising sort of shift in that decision making and thinking over the course of years 6, 7 and 8. I think that's important to say. So I'd say the proportion is quite low. It's probably in the order of 15 to 20% girls moving on to day schools. The vast majority are moving to flexi board, weekly board, mostly, or full board. And we're very clear in our advice really about senior schools that some senior schools with boarding are genuinely full boarding and would expect the child to be in school for sort of 3 weekly blocks. Obviously there'd be access at weekends on Sundays to visit, but they're not allowed out regularly at weekends, whereas others there's much more flexibility. So we're clear about that in our advice too. I think that's an important part of the equation. Okay, Sophie, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitworth. Okay, so I'm just going to answer one final question, and the question was, does Godstowe have any Suzuki piano teachers? So we have got several piano teachers, probably about 4 or 5 different piano teachers, and they do all use different methods of teaching. Probably most of them teach quite traditionally rather than using the Suzuki method. But I think we do have one that does very much teach the children to play by ear initially, and is adopting probably a slightly different approach. But for example, we had a little girl join us last year who wanted to play the harp, who played the harp actually, and we didn't have any harp teachers, but we were able to recruit one quite quickly. We're actually a really popular school for the visiting music teachers to work at because our girls achieve such high standards. So I'm confident that we could meet that need. Okay, so I think we are going to finish our open morning now. Before we do that, I'd just like to say that ordinarily our May open morning would include our art exhibition and a fashion show. And the fashion show would be our older girls in year 7 and in year 8 who would have made their own skirts and dresses, and then we would we put a catwalk up in our school hall, and we have a very, very age appropriate, very sweet actually, fashion show sort of halfway through the open morning, and also an absolutely fantastic art exhibition. So what we're going to do now, when we've all gone, is we're going to show you our some of what we would have shown in our art exhibition. So we've done our very best. Our head of art, Mrs. Sloggett, who is so committed and such a fantastic art teacher, has put together for you a virtual art exhibition. So I very much hope that you will stay and watch, because I think you will be very surprised by the high standard of art which even our younger pupils achieve. I can see there are a few questions that we haven't managed to answer, so don't worry, while you are enjoying the art exhibition, we will have a go at answering those questions, so feel free to keep on with questions for the next 20 minutes or so. But thank you very much for coming. I think we might have had one or two very small technical hitches, but I hope it's been a good opportunity for you to learn a lot about Godstowe, and I am sure that when the time is right and before too long, we will all have the opportunity to meet in person. So here's the art exhibition, and thank you very much for coming this morning.